We're nearing the finishing line of our summer sermon series, A Christian Faith for the 21st Century. We've been considering how the Christian faith might be changing over the course of this new century and what those changes might mean for the church. Among the points we've made thus far, the belief that following the path of Jesus can lead us to an awareness and experience of the sacred and the oneness and the unity of all life, that force and source that we call God. That conversation and relationship with others outside the Christian faith, but on the pathway of God, can in fact assist us on our journey. That we seek to form a community of people that is wildly inclusive of all people. That how we behave toward each other is the fullest expression of what we believe. That we believe that there is more value in questioning than in absolute answers, and that we are called to strive for peace and justice among all people. So today we build on it, and today we consider our calling to protect and restore the integrity of the earth. When the people of God began telling the ancient mythic story of God creating the heavens and the earth, they realized something incredibly important. In the first story of creation that we read again this morning, God creates the earth with humankind as the crowning achievement. And at the creation of humankind, God says, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." And God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of the earth, and every tree with its seed and its fruit, you shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food," and it was so. Now, you could build an interpretation that says that human beings are in charge of the creation and can do whatever they want to the creation because they are in charge. God gave it to us, goes the explanation, and we can do with it as we please. In fact, we have lived that interpretation throughout human history, and usually with rather unpleasant consequences. A more faithful interpretation might be to understand human beings as the stewards of creation. Stewards manage and care for and oversee the resources entrusted to their care. Faithful stewards of creation adjust their own way of living to the conditions of the creation. They do not use and abuse the creation as an endless source of life. They realize that there are limits to creation's ability to continue and sustain this life it harbors. So God has created you and me to care for creation as God's faithful stewards. God has commissioned us to preserve and protect the creation and to ensure its continued viability. In 1990, our Presbyterian Church USA issued a statement, "Restoring Creation for Ecology and Justice." 26 years ago, we were reminded that God's work in creation is too wonderful, too ardent, ancient, too beautiful, too good to be destroyed. That restoring creation is God's own work in our time, in which God comes to both judge and to restore. That the Creator-Redeemer calls faithful people to become engaged with God in keeping and healing the creation, human and non-human. That human life and well-being depend upon the flourishing of other life and the integrity of the life-supporting processes that God has ordained. And that the love of neighbor, particularly the least of Christ's brothers and sisters, requires action to stop the poisoning, the erosion, the wastefulness that are causing suffering and death. 26 years ago, we Presbyterians said that. This is our calling and our commission from God. We are called to be stewards of the earth, caretakers of creation. We are not given carte blanche to use and abuse it as we choose. Faith in the Creator demands faithfulness to the creation. Care for creation will require a new perspective. To gain a sense of it, you have to go back to the work of Martin Buber. Buber was a 20th century Jewish philosopher who developed what has come to be called the philosophy of dialogue. In its simplest terms, Buber taught us that we can look at all of our lives from one of two perspectives. We can look at things from an I-it perspective, in which we see things, including other people, as objects for our own benefit and amusement. An I-it relationship is like a cat playing with a mouse. The cat amuses itself with the mouse, plays with the mouse, enjoys the mouse, and then makes a quick meal of the mouse. It feels nothing about the mouse. It's merely a plaything, a distraction, a source of nourishment. The other way of seeing is from an I-thou relationship. In this approach, we see things as subject to subject. We begin to see connections between ourselves and others. We care about their welfare, their well-being, their safety, and their happiness. And we begin to see the links of the greater chains of life, and we honor them and respect them and nourish them and protect them. When we begin to see our calling and commission to be stewards of the earth, not from an I-it relationship, in which the earth is little more than our plaything to be used until we tire of it or wear it out, and instead begin seeing the creation as living, life-giving, and life-sustaining source in an I-thou relationship, a relationship that is certainly more mature and informed, then we can begin to answer God's call and live into our commission. And we need to be clear. The care of the creation also involves us in the ongoing work of justice and peace. As we begin to discover new ways of caring for the creation, of tending the garden, we must be mindful of those whose lives are going to be upended as we move from the old way to the new way. As we begin to move from using expendable forms of energy to renewable forms of energy, we must do all that we can to retrain and equip those who have been producing the old forms of energy so that they can continue to live and to provide for their families. When you begin to think about that, you begin to see why many coal mining communities and their members are so frightened by conversations surrounding new forms of energy. We cannot simply rip the rug out from under their feet. That would be an injustice. As the use of coal wanes, we need to be retraining and re-equipping those in coal-producing industries for life beyond the time of coal production and use. It's not enough to say that we're going to stop using coal. We must care for those whose lives will be turned upside down as a long-held way of life begins to disappear. When we begin to see how we, as first world people, treat the earth and use its resources, we begin to understand that we use far more of the earth's resources than is our rightful share. As a result, the first world people pump more and more toxins into the soil, into the water, into the air, causing sickness, disease, and other forms of tragedy in other parts of the world. It has been said that from space there is no first world, no second world, no third world. There is only one world, one planet. Perhaps we need to be reminded that what we do in one part of the world affects the rest of the world. As the Christian faith evolves in the 21st century, this potent combination of caring for creation while doing justice and making peace are going to find new opportunities to walk hand in hand. People of faith can lead the way in caring for the creation and in advocating for those whose lives are disrupted and enveloped in fear as those changes come. We can help others see that caring for the creation and caring for each other is the truest form of I-thou living. Finally, as we live into a new understanding and a more faithful stewardship of creation, we may well gain new insight into the Creator. We have become more and more disengaged from creation. We no longer see the intimate connections between the earth and our lives. As we have adopted more urban and suburban models of living, we have been disconnected from the creation. Now, if you need an illustration, look no further than Pokemon Go. Now, for those of you who, like me, have entered the years of our gradual decline, Pokemon Go is a new game that you can put on your smartphone and enables you to walk around towns and cities and other places of note all over the world, collecting imaginary characters. One of them actually lives right outside that tower door on Southeast 2nd Street. Another lives at Temple Adath B'nai Israel. I'm hoping that the Muslims have one too. I would hate to think that Pokemon is not interfaith. There are more than a few in Oak Hill Cemetery. Others are spread throughout beautiful downtown Evansville. Now, the point of the game's purpose, listen, is to get people to go outside and walk. I'm not making this up. I couldn't make it up on my best day. Now, a cynical interpretation might be that we have become so disengaged from the creation that we need an app to help us re-engage. But as we re-engage with the creation, we can begin to see the intimate connections between God and what God has made. We may begin to see the miraculous patterns of life that are all around us, patterns that may lead us to a deeper understanding of who God is and of our connection to God. We may begin to more deeply appreciate the wonder and the beauty and the intricacies of creation. We may begin to regain that sense of awe and wonder that is due to God and God alone, a sense of awe and wonder that may have become somewhat silenced in us. And when we begin to see God's fingerprints all over creation, we may be able to begin seeing that God's fingerprints are all over our lives. And maybe, just maybe, we can begin to care for the creation and our fellow creatures. As we move more deeply into this new century, people of faith will have the opportunity to lead the way in tending the garden of God's creation. We can speak to the world with words and actions that proclaim our connection to this planet and our participation in its reclamation and recovery. We can care for the neighbor who has been adversely affected, and we can ensure justice for those who will be impacted by necessary changes. And even more wonderfully, we can grow in the mystery and wonder of that sacred presence that we call God. We can wonder and marvel at a God who creates, provides, and sustains us all through the ultimate gift of life on a planet that is an expression of God's creation, provision, and sustaining love for us all. Thanks be to God for this great gift, for now and evermore. Amen.